Hello there folks, I'm Dan Brown from Sort of Interesting, and today you're joining me on board good old narrowboat Abel's Ark for some great excitement, as this morning I passed my driving test. And my goodness me, after starting to learn to drive at age 17, here I am at age 32, finally passed. Admittedly, I haven't been learning non-stop for the past 15 years, so better just to clarify that. I've just realised that I've got the incense burning down here. I haven't had incense for ages, so there's a huge amount of smoke around me. So if I appear slightly like I'm disappearing into a mystical realm, then I promise you there's no issue with the fireplace leaking. Anyway, oh good grief, why did I put it there? So I just really thought I'd share a few thoughts and a few general things about learning to drive all the way as old as in my 30s, as that's quite uncommon, and obviously the general sort of thing you see when you see learner drivers go past, it'll be somebody in their late teens and all the usual sort of stuff, and just a few thoughts on having not been able to drive for all of my adult life up until this particular day. Has it really had much of an impact and stuff, and what are the impacts and what are the benefits that I see to my life now that I can drive going forwards? So I'm going to try not to waffle at you too much and dive straight into it as I inhale these violet incense fumes. So I would say that the first thing is, obviously, back when I was 17, I did start to take lessons. I actually took my test twice and failed back as a 17-year-old. And as many of you who tune into this video, and some of you already from this video will gather, I'm a bit of a jittery, nervous sort of character. And of course, dial me back 15 years to being 17, I was infinitely more nervous and less confident than I am even today. So obviously that wasn't a great experience and left a bit of a sour taste in my mouth. So I basically sort of thought, well, I haven't really got any pressing need to start driving. So I left it and left it and left it, and then I got the idea of getting a boat in my early 20s, so then I thought, well, I'll save me money and put it towards a boat, and again, if I've got a boat, I'm not going to be taking a car around with me and stuff like that. So of course it eventually all spiraled and snowballed until here I am at age 32, having only just finally passed. So I started lessons late last year, and the first thing that I was amazed at is just how busy, certainly around the Oswestry area, a lot of the instructors were, and I was told like, oh, it'd be 3 months, or I think I was phoning in October and I was being told by some people like, oh, you won't be able to start until after Christmas and what have you. So anyway, I started taking lessons and everything all went well. I would say I felt as if I'd never been in a car and never driven a car before. It wasn't like everything flooded back to me from 15 years ago when I started driving. It was just a case of, right, we're behind the wheel again, let's just treat it as starting from scratch. So that, I suppose, in some ways was a benefit, because I wasn't like in the old sort of, oh, now I remember this, oh, now I remember that, and waking myself up about things I'd worried about or done wrong years and years prior. But I just did 1 hour a week. I was at one point thinking of doing an intensive course, and then I decided to delay that because, well, or not delay it, just not do it, because I, again, didn't have that, oh, I've got to get out, I've got to drive, got to do this, got to do that. So as lessons went on, I found everything pretty straightforward, really, and the core thing, and as you'll hear, everything went a little bit awry with my lessons later on, not through anybody's fault, or not in the way of I couldn't drive all of a sudden or anything like that, but I found that it was more to do with staying calm and relaxing and being at ease behind the wheel, rather than any issues with learning to drive, if that makes sense. And I don't know if being older or being younger would be a benefit or a tick in the column against you, because I feel as if being older and more able to understand stuff, I might have overthought and worried about stuff a lot more over the last few months learning to drive than I did previously. When I was younger, and maybe not so thinking of, oh, what if this, what if that, what if this? And again, as soon as I was driving and sort of managed to get that out of my mind and was just occupied with the road and not too, oh, I've got to do this, oh, what's that? And you just sort of start to be at ease and flow far more naturally, rather than being like that, oh my goodness me, I'm going to react wildly over the top to every little thing that happens with another vehicle or anything like that. So I found that I sort of got relatively confident about taking the test and that. I think I've ended up doing driving lessons for maybe about 8 months or so, but there was an issue. Sadly, my driving instructor, who I was with for about 7 months or so, got taken ill and had to give up instructing with effectively immediate effect. So 3 weeks out from today, my driving test day, I suddenly had no instructor, no vehicle to take the test in, and had just obviously spent months and months learning in one particular car. So I was wildly phoning around and sending messages left, right and centre to instructors, and nobody could help me, and everybody was busy and stuff like that. And probably a lot of people were wondering, hang on, why hasn't he got an instructor 3 weeks from his test and stuff like that? So it probably seems suspicious as to why I suddenly needed an instructor. So luckily, a wonderful hero by the name of Catherine from Stop and Go Driving got back in touch with me and could take me on board. So started to cram in a load of hour-and-a-half lessons here, there and everywhere. And again, I then sort of had gone from being at relative ease about doing my test to having a wild panic moment of like, oh my goodness me, I need just a car to be in. So that took the stress levels about the test up massively, but then it all settled down gently again. And I was worried about getting into a different car and then trying to learn to drive in 2 weeks in that car and do the manoeuvres and learn my sort of markings and at this point turn here, this point turn there. But luckily it all went unbelievably well, and it may have even been like a bit of a fresh start in some respects. And of course, get through to today, pass the test, and life's all good, so we're happy with that. Now, up until this point, not being able to drive and being about on boats and travelling up and down and stuff with my bike that's currently in the shower just 2 hour, to the back of us basically, that's its own sort of almost lifestyle choice of cycling everywhere and putting in thousands of miles on the bike and that. But as some of you who tune into these videos may know, that sometimes, about 2 months ago as a good example, the terrible weather came in instead of the beautiful summer weather, and I was doing 20 odd mile bike rides each way to go into town to work, and it was not a great experience. So obviously there's certain moments where there's no buses around or it's a long bike ride and stuff that make things a lot more difficult, especially on Sundays and early mornings, late nights where you haven't got bus routes and buses running and that. So having a car would have definitely made my life a lot easier, even being on the boat and obviously then having to think about, well, if I take the boat here, where can I take the car and stuff like that. I was discussing this with somebody recently who may be tuning in. Hello there, sir. And referring to piggybacking, basically, of take the boat, walk or bike back to wherever your car is, move the car down, move the boat again a few days later and move the car. And again, obviously that fetches up its own sort of difficulties and things, but that's part of boat life, I suppose. It's all a little bit ramshackle and make it work however best you can, I suppose is the best way to word it. So anyway, as I was saying, I don't think that there's much, because I've when I lived in town with me mum and that, I worked 10 minutes away from her house and stuff, so it was never like, oh, I'm driving miles to work and what have you. However, going forwards, say I get a car now, I haven't, but just pretend for argument's sake, now I've got a car. Obviously it'd make these long commutes and I could take the boat further afield and travel in a lot easier and what have you, and not be worrying about 30 odd mile bike rides or even further than that. Obviously being able to drive in and out of work and stuff make life far easier just in day to day with travelling and getting supplies and fetching even simple things like having like my oven fetched to the boat, and obviously had to wait for my mum's fella to be able to fetch it out in the van and stuff, rather than obviously putting an oven on the back of my bike and pedalling out. There's all sorts of little ways where obviously having a car would make life infinitely easier, and certainly easier on my legs. I'm getting old now, remember, but I think that some of the things, like, obviously it opens up a lot more, like in terms of, like, just for argument's sake, looking for a job. Obviously after I've been driving for a couple of years and that, I'd then be eligible for a lot of places to be like I don't know, drive the post van or something like that, for argument's sake. I mean, there's so many little delivery jobs and things like that around, and again, you might need a certain amount of 1 year, 2 years experience before you can then go for those sort of jobs, and you might need to up your licence and that, but we're well on the way. And even beyond, even more simplistic than that, just looking at jobs in this local area, whereas obviously previously I've had to think, well, I've got to be able to get to and from it from the boat, or when I lived in town, from town, so you're not necessarily going to want to go to the other local towns in the area where they're bigger places with obviously far more opportunities. But if I'm going to have to travel for an hour each way on a bus and cost me, goodness knows, like dozens of pounds a week in bus fares and stuff like that, then obviously it doesn't make it a very appealing prospect. Whereas obviously if a job comes up and I was like, oh yeah, that's it, oh where is it, oh Chester or Shrewsbury or Wrexham or insert local area, suddenly it's like, oh well, what's that, like a 20-minute drive? I mean, that's, again, suddenly not a huge issue. So there's a lot of things like that, as well as obviously being able to help out friends and family and stuff like that, whereas I've always been the one requiring lifts and requesting being dropped off here or there. Suddenly obviously the shoe is on the other foot, and it can be me who's actually paying back all of that kindness and chauffeur service from the last 3 and a bit decades of my life. So there's a lot of different things I'm looking forward to getting stuck into. There's a lot of stuff just on the basis of YouTube where I can actually go out to different places now and do some filming and take me bike in the car and go out on adventures further afield and go out. Well, again, it's that element of freedom, but it's not necessarily the element of, oh, I'm going to be going, oh yeah, I've got a car now, better go and drive it somewhere. It's that thing of, it's the option to do it. Obviously, not having a car all these years though, has let me save up loads of money that otherwise would have been spent in petrol and stuff like that. So that's my biggest thing, I think, from this point on. Looking at cars, don't want to go for something too old, don't want to spend a fortune, so maybe a few thousand as a nice entry point on a very small car. Fiat Panda all the way. Sponsor me, somebody, Fiat. If I don't wake up and see that somebody's left a brand new Panda on the towpath for me, then I'm afraid you're not getting a mention in the videos. Anyway, back to serious discussion. So yeah, like just something, a small simple car that's not an absolute wreck, but not a Lamborghini. Again, unless Lamborghini want to sponsor this series, but something simple like that. Obviously, I'll have to see how it goes in terms of how expensive it is to run, and then you've got all sorts of things that can go wrong, just like the boat, and just like my blown inverter at the minute. Like, something like that is a hassle, but at least I know when I replace that at some point in the future, that my actual sort of proper home is having another feature added to it. Whereas, again, if I'm out and about in the car and it's not right and this is going to cost a fortune, that needs doing, then I may feel less enthusiastic about driving very often in 6 to 12 months time. So we'll see what happens, and well, like I say, I'm just glad to have passed it and to have got all the lessons and everything out of the way, and well, let's watch this space. But there'll be some different types of YouTube videos coming in soon, now that I will be able to roam around freely by motor vehicle. Until the next time, my friends, I'm going to wrap this up and say, please do consider subscribing, hit the notification bell so that YouTube will hopefully tell you when I post a new video. Please do also... Oh, I haven't shown you my certificate anywhere, but anyway, that's not important. Please do also check the links in the description. You'll find me on Facebook and Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, all those sorts of things, posting all sorts of pictures from boat life and so on. And please do also consider, if you want to help me out, checking out my short books about boat life available for the Kindle, or as a handy little volume paperback book with some of the shorter Kindle books wrapped up in there together. Until the next time, my friends, though, have an absolutely fantastic day. Keep it wheel-worthy, keep it boat-worthy, keep it interesting, and of course, my friends, farewell.